Imagine standing in a crowded room where everyone is sharing everything they own. It is a moment of total unity, a social miracle where poverty is being wiped out in real time. Then, a man named Ananias walks in with his wife, Sapphira. They drop a bag of silver at the feet of the leaders, claiming it is the full price of a land sale. Seconds later, Ananias is dead on the floor. Within 3 hours, his wife is dead too. Most people assume they were killed because they were stingy with their money, but that is a massive misunderstanding of the text. If you read the story that way, you miss a terrifying linguistic connection that links this moment to an ancient execution in the Old Testament. Buried in the original Greek grammar is a specific, disturbing word that modern translations often soften. It is a word that reveals this was not about a donation, it was about a spiritual virus. By the end of this video, you will realize why this was not an overreaction by God, but a necessary surgical strike to protect a specific sacred system that was just beginning to breathe. You have probably been told your whole life that Ananias and Sapphira were struck down because they did not give enough to the church. We often hear this story used as a warning to be generous or to keep your promises to God. But if you look closer at the text in the book of Acts, a massive contradiction emerges. Peter explicitly tells Ananias in Acts chapter 5, verse 4, that the land belonged to him before he sold it. Even after the sale, the money was still in his own control. There was no law requiring them to give anything at all. The Bible is an anthology of many genres, including narrative histories that pull together eyewitness testimonies to tell a full story. Acts is the thorough account of how the Holy Spirit spread the gospel throughout the world after Jesus returned to the Father. It is a book about new beginnings. When we see a sudden, violent judgment like this at the start of a new movement, we have to ask if there is a deeper pattern at play. To see the real problem, we have to look at the original language rug pull. The New Testament was written in Koine Greek, which was the common language of the Roman Empire during the 1st century. It was a heavily Semitized Greek, meaning the style was often influenced by Hebrew patterns of thought. In Acts chapter 5, verse 2, the text says Ananias kept back part of the proceeds. The English phrase "kept back" sounds like someone just being cautious with their savings. But the ancient writer used the Greek word Nosphizomai. This is not a word for simple withholding. In the 1st century, Nosphizomai was a technical, legal term. It meant to embezzle, or to secretly set aside for oneself what has already been declared as belonging to a higher authority. It is the word used for a soldier stealing loot that belonged to the king. It was a public declaration of allegiance being quietly colonized by private greed. To understand why this specific word mattered so much to the original audience, you have to look at the bizarre historical smoking gun found in the Septuagint. The Septuagint was a Koine Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible created by Hellenic Jewish scholars in Alexandria. It was the version of the scriptures that the early church primarily used. The authors of the New Testament were shaped by these scriptures, and they often used specific Greek words to trigger memories of Old Testament stories. The word Nosphizomai appears in a very famous, very dark place in the Greek translation of the Old Testament. It shows up in Joshua chapter 7, verse 1. This is the story of a man named Achan. Just like Ananias, Achan lived during a time of a great new beginning. Israel had just entered the Promised Land and seen the walls of Jericho fall. God had commanded that all the silver and gold from the city were devoted to him. But the text says the children of Israel committed a trespass, and Achan took off the accursed thing. In the Greek Septuagint version of that verse, the word for taking or trespassing is the exact same word used for Ananias, Nosphizomai. This is not a coincidence. The Bible is a collection of writings from different authors at different times, but it functions as a book of books with a cohesive internal logic. By using this specific word, the author of Acts is screaming at the reader to remember Achan. In Joshua chapter 7, Achan stole what was devoted to God and hid it under his tent. Because of his secret theft, the entire nation of Israel lost their next battle and people died. The presence of that sin in the camp acted like a spiritual rot that paralyzed the movement of God. Achan was eventually caught and executed because his private greed threatened the survival of the entire community. This elevates the story of Ananias and Sapphira from a simple moral lesson about lying into a mind-bending cosmic narrative. One purpose of these stories is so we can learn from bad examples. God recorded these real-life, historically accurate accounts for our education and encouragement. When we see the same Greek word used for Achan and Ananias, we realize that the early church in Acts was entering a new promised land. They were a new temple made of people, where the Holy Spirit was the creator and sustainer. Everything in that community was considered devoted to God. When Ananias and Sapphira used the Nosphizomai move, they were trying to bring the Achan virus into the new temple. They wanted the reputation of being totally devoted to God, while secretly keeping a back door open for their own security. If God had allowed that virus to stay, the integrity of the entire church would have collapsed before it even started. The real battle was not about a bank account, it was about the slow, quiet erosion of allegiance. The Bible teaches that the core of who we are is defined by what we love. It suggests a basis for morality that focuses on conduct and character. In Acts chapter 5, verse 3, Peter asks Ananias why Satan has filled his heart to lie to the Holy Spirit. This was a direct assault on the presence of God among the people. It was a test of faith, and as the book of James says, the testing of your faith produces perseverance. But for Ananias, the test revealed a heart that was double-minded. James warns that a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. This means your real struggle today isn't about whether you give enough money to a cause. The real question is where you are practicing the Nosphizomai move in your own life. In what areas have you declared total allegiance to God while secretly withholding a part of your heart for your own control? We often wonder why God seems so intense in these moments, but the text shows that He is protective of the truth. Truth and integrity are the foundation of any movement that is going to last. The Bible provides patterns of moral reasoning that highlight how justice and mercy must walk together. In the story of Hezekiah, we see a king who survived destruction because he relied entirely on God instead of his own strength. In the story of Ruth, we see a woman who was rewarded because her loyalty was absolute and unselfish. The disturbing Greek word in Acts 5 is a reminder that you cannot have a partial relationship with the truth. You cannot live in a sacred space while keeping a secret tent full of stolen loot. The early church was a community that was walking by faith and not by sight. They were attempting to live out the commandment to love the Lord with all their heart, soul, and strength. When Ananias and Sapphira lied, they were not just lying to men. They were trying to deceive the very power that the universe was formed by. They were trying to manipulate the Holy Spirit, which the book of Hebrews describes as a word that is quick and powerful, sharper than any two-edged sword. The sudden death of this couple brought great fear upon the entire church. This fear was not a terror of a mean God, but a profound realization of the weight of His presence. It was a realization that the system they were part of was real, it was holy, and it required absolute integrity. This exact pattern of trying to maintain a religious appearance while keeping back a secret portion of the heart did not start in Jerusalem. It traces all the way back to the very first decision made in a garden, where the desire for self-governance overrode the command of the Creator. That original breach of contract set the stage for every tragedy that followed. And this pattern of trading spiritual reality for physical security is the exact psychological warfare that we see playing out in the most controversial legal contract in the entire Bible. We broke down that contract and the secret language used to bind it in this video right here.